I'd like to recognise the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. The actions of the Conservative government in New South Wales relate to the main topic of my address today, that is insecure or precarious work. I know that this is an issue that has exercised the minds of the PSI for many years. Insecure work, as we refer to it in Australia, affects not just the private sector, but increasingly the government sector. We have seen restructuring, outsourcing, privatisation, and contracting of public services and utilities. Employers have sought to reduce their employment costs and to shift the risks and costs of employment onto the shoulders of workers in order to have a cheap and so-called flexible workforce. In Australia alone, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs at all levels of government have been lost over recent decades as a result of this market-driven program. Tens of thousands more of the jobs that are left are now insecure, lacking many of the qualities we would define as a good job. There is a clear and definite link between the free market and the rise of insecure work in what is loosely defined as the public sector. Now, we know this is not solely an Australian problem, and all over the world workers are fighting to stop the erosion of their rights and to stem the tide of insecure work. But last month, the Australian Council of Trade Unions launched the start of what will be a major union response to insecure work in Australia. We will coordinate a national campaign under the slogan, Secure Jobs, Better Future. Unlike much of the developed world, Australia's economy is very strong and has performed strongly for most of the past few decades. But the success of the Australian economy hides a nasty secret. There is no justification for the high rate of casualisation and other forms of insecure work. Today, only about 60% of workers are in full or part-time employment. The rest are engaged as casuals, on short-term contracts in labour hire, or as contractors in work that is unpredictable, uncertain, and that undermines what ordinary Australians need to feel secure in their lives and their communities. And this is growing. Secure jobs are getting harder and harder to find. Insecure work makes it tough on working families who have less certain incomes, rising fixed household costs, and the shouldering of more and more household debt. Insecurity, unpredictability, lack of routine and stability is having a deleterious effect on the social cohesion of our society and its basic unit, that is the family. It cannot function as it should. Australian unions believe in an Australia where reliable workers should have jobs that they and their families can rely on. Jobs that provide fair and predictable pay and hours of work, that give them a say in their workplace, that gives them access to important conditions like paid leave, quality skills and training and career opportunities, and of course, a healthy and safe work environment. Employers have taken advantage of workplace changes to put people on contracts that employ them as casuals. This is not about improving efficiency or productivity. It is about shifting the risks and costs onto workers to increase profits. That is pure and simple. So today we have people having to register as independent contractors to drop leaflets in a letterbox. We have teachers who go from term to term on a fixed contract, never knowing if they will have a job next term or next year. We have storemen waiting on a single text message the night before to know if they will earn money the next day. We have labour hire workers in manufacturing working alongside permanent employees that on less income and with none of the conditions that the union has won for their permanent workers. We have cleaners who are so-called independent contractors and building workers who've been set up in sham contracting arrangements. And we still have clothing out workers paid at a piece rate. We have women in admin who have worked regular 40 hours a week for years on end but remain casuals despite their wishes to be otherwise. So that every time they are sick, or their child is sick, or they want to take a holiday, they are penalised financially. Now the employers say to us, yes, but Ged, casual work gives people a choice. It gives them flexibility. This may be true for some people, but for many, many more Australians, casual work is not a choice because it is all they can get. And you know what? That is not good enough. In the planning for this campaign, we've spoken to workers around the country, and their stories are immensely poignant, particularly our young people who've never known anything else but this type of work. And an emerging group is our middle-aged men who have long lost the security of a permanent job. Oh, they say to us, that's just the way it is. They don't like it, but it's like the weather. What can we do about it? But they are wrong, because we can do something about it. We can tell them that there is a better way. We can tell them there is an alternative. For Australian unions, the argument that insecure work is the price we have to pay for a strong and internationally competitive economy does not wash. And unions are committed to continuing economic growth, of course we are, and to improving living standards for all. But this should not and does not need to come at the expense of quality jobs, of respect for workers' rights, of workers exercising some control over their working lives and being able to live with dignity. We don't want a society where short-term insecure work is the norm. We want one where everyone has the right to a job where they feel secure in their work, where they can grow their career and support their family. I really think we've got to stop this now, right now. Otherwise, non-standard forms of employment will become the standard form. Now, our campaign here in Australia is going to take many forms, and the solutions that we propose are going to be multi-layered. But first, we know that this nasty secret of the Australian labour market must be exposed. And the important early stage of our campaign is explaining how insecure work has a corrosive effect on our society, on our families, on our communities. It creates stress and tension, both financial and emotional. And it prevents people from fulfilling a role in their community. So we will create a forum for these stories to be told. We will need to bust some myths. For example, that the only people in casual jobs these days are students or working mums, because we know that that is not true. We envisage that Secure Jobs, Better Future is a campaign that will not be confined to the workplace, but will spread into our communities around Australia, so that we will all stand up together to say that insecure workers deserve better. And as it develops, we anticipate building a coalition with community organisations, with churches, and those whose work involves dealing with the fallout from insecure work. Our Council of Social Services produced a report at our launch of this campaign recently saying that they have had a 50% increase in the request for charitable services in the last year. And the majority of those people are working. So our campaign will involve bargaining in the workplace for better wages and conditions and for more secure jobs. Many of our unions already do this and have been very successful over the years in negotiating clauses, for example, that restrict the use of contractors or that convert casuals to permanency over a period of time. It will involve better enforcement of existing rights and preventing the abuse of non-standard employment. And there is definitely a place for our governments to take a leading role through positive procurement policies, and we can learn from other countries. As the campaign develops and the conversation we are starting today takes off, we will examine all the options for better minimum standards of employment. The test for our political parties will be whether they are prepared to act and respond in the interests of workers or that of big business. This, I believe, is a campaign for our times. It's a campaign for our times because the plight of insecure workers has been ignored for way too long. It's been ignored by our communities, but also by us, the unions. It's also a campaign for our times because insecure work impacts on living standards and on people's sense of being excluded from society. Campaigning for secure jobs is one part of providing a social protection floor for all citizens. And globally, unions are campaigning to have the social protection floor endorsed by the ILO to advance its decent work agenda. Social security should be recognised as a human right and a pillar of the decent work agenda, along with employment, social dialogue and rights at work. Australian unions believe that economies and societies are not only fairer to their citizens, but also more economically resilient and efficient when they have an effective social safety net in place to provide support to the most vulnerable. This applies to developing as well as developed countries. International financial institutions should support the establishment and improvement of the elements of the social protection floor and not call for them to be reduced on the grounds of fiscal balance. The elements of the social protection floor are healthcare, including mental health care, support for young, including nutrition, education and care, income support for the unemployed, and income support for the aged. These are basic elements that should be the rights of all citizens. Additionally, quality public services, good social and physical infrastructure, including childcare facilities, and fair fiscal policies are essential to ensure high levels of quality employment. Quality public services in particular are incredibly important for providing a strong social floor. And collective bargaining is important in ensuring a fair share of productivity gains and a reduction of the gender pay gap. High levels of employment, the promotion of decent jobs and setting of adequate wages are vital elements for the financial sustainability of comprehensive social security systems. And globally, unions must work together to ensure that the social protection floor is debated and endorsed at the next meeting of the International Labour Conference in June next year. I believe that we, as trade unionists, that is the trade union movement, are the only ones. We are the only ones with the will, the organised power and the convictions to push back against these agendas, particularly this neoliberal agenda to push all of the risk onto individuals. Remember all those years ago when Margaret Thatcher said, much to our astonishment, there is no society. She said there is no society. There is only individuals. Well, I think that that agenda she set about the demise of a civil society in that great country that I believe is culminating in the civil unrest and disquiet that we are seeing there today. I much prefer to tell you and live by the view of one of our great Prime Ministers. He said, I try to think of the Labour movement not as putting an extra sixpence into somebody's pocket or making somebody Prime Minister, but rather as a movement bringing something better to the people, better standards of living, greater happiness to the mass of the people. We have a great objective, the light on the hill, which we aim to reach by working for the betterment of mankind, not only here, but anywhere we can give a helping hand. And if it were not for that, the Labour movement would not be worth fighting for. In solidarity, comrades, I thank you.